Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Andrea Wickerly, and welcome to the Ready Living podcast, where each episode is designed to educate, inspire, and empower you to create the life you want. Thanks for joining us, and remember to subscribe for free on your favorite platform. My guest today is Dr. Danica Radovanović. She is an internationally recognized digital transformation expert who has shaped digital initiatives spanning the global north and south, with a particular focus on empowering children, women, and vulnerable communities through digital inclusion. She served as a child online protection expert for the International Telecommunication Union, the United Nations Specialized Agency for Information and Communication Technologies, and served as digital inclusion advisor at the Basic Internet Foundation in Norway, contributing to significant projects in the global south. She's the author of numerous publications and policy papers, as well as the author and editor of the book Digital Literacy and Inclusion: Stories, Platforms, Communities, which features over a dozen global experts examining digital literacy as a prerequisite for effective digital inclusion. She has a master's degree in information science studies from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, a PhD in engineering industrial management from the University of Novi Sad, Faculty of Technical Sciences in Serbia, and a former PhD Chevening Scholar at Oxford Internet Institute at the University of Oxford in the UK. She currently serves as a senior researcher at the Leibniz Institute for Social Sciences in Germany, the largest German infrastructure institute for the social sciences. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on the show. In today's world, being able to access reliable information and having the skills to use digital tools are as fundamental as access to clean water. The latest data from ITU from 2024 says that about 1/3 of world population still lacks internet access, and additional do not have digital skills necessary to fully benefit from online opportunities, to safely navigate the digital world. This persistent digital divide highlights the importance of both expanding connectivity and promoting digital literacy worldwide. So, internet connectivity is not enough. Digital literacy helps people navigate complexities of the online environment, to protect themselves from misinformation, to actively engage in everyday life. It's basically foundation of digital equity, which is a process that enables individuals and communities to participate and benefit from today's growing digital society. When people are digitally literate, they are better equipped to protect themselves from online risks and to make informed decisions that affect their lives.
And I know we're going to talk about some of those online risks later on in our conversation, but I do want to ask you a question about your book, the one I mentioned in the introduction, Digital Literacy and Inclusion: Stories, Platforms, and Communities. There you talk about needing to move past old definitions of digital literacy. What does digital literacy mean in the 21st century, and how has that definition evolved since the early days of the World Wide Web and social media?
That's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of the book. In the early days of the World Wide Web, digital literacy was often defined simply as a set of skills. If you could use a web browser, send emails, or format a document, you were considered digitally literate. The focus was mainly on basic technical skills and simple access to technology. But as our lives become more deeply intertwined with digital platforms and social media, and now we have artificial intelligence and large language models, that old definition just isn't enough. So in the book, I argue that we need to move past those narrow definitions and recognize that digital literacy today is much broader and more complex. I talk about digital literacy as a set of capabilities and values that help us become independent thinkers, contributors, and responsible digital citizens. It includes critical thinking skills, creativity, and the ability to navigate complex digital environments. It's about being able to find, evaluate, and use information critically and responsibly. It's about understanding how algorithms work, how to protect your privacy, how to communicate and collaborate in a respectful and meaningful way. I will give you an example, actually. Recent Siri lawsuit in the United States, where users alleged that their private conversations were recorded and analyzed without their consent. And this highlights a critical aspect of, I would say, modern surveillance. We live and socialize in this modern panopticon. It's not just about these technical skills, but also about having awareness and critical thinking to question how these systems operate, to understand what are the implications for our privacy and to advocate for our rights. And that's why I argue that digital literacy in 21st century is fundamentally different than what it was in the early days of the internet. Without this kind of literacy, people are more vulnerable, not just to scams or misinformation, but to systemic issues like erosion of privacy or surveillance.
How do you personally define critical thinking? I'd love for you to elaborate a little bit about why that is such a key skill, especially where we're inundated with so much information.
When I think about critical thinking, I often recall one quote by Ernest Hemingway that says, "Every man should have a built-in automatic crap detector operating inside him." I love that quote because it captures the spirit of what critical thinking is all about. Having these internal tools, question, to filter, to discern what's true and what's not. So for me, critical thinking is really the art of asking questions. It's also related to curiosity. It's about not taking information at face value, but instead pausing and ask, where does this information come from? Who benefits from this message? What evidence supports it? In many ways, asking questions is, for me, highest form of self-consciousness and foundation of all critical thinking skills. And that's why I believe that philosophy and logic should be central to our education system. Back in the days when I was in gymnasium and lyceum, we had philosophy and logic as mandatory subjects along with Latin. And these disciplines trained us. And in the book, I explore how critical thinking and digital literacy are practiced and expressed in diverse communities around the world. And I want to stress that this book wouldn't have been possible without terrific experts and scholars in digital literacy and internet research who contributed their expertise and unique perspectives and case studies across geographies. I had the privilege of serving and compiling this collection. If I look at how different communities practice digital literacy, I see interesting variations. For example, in some Scandinavian countries, there's a strong emphasis on media literacy from a young age, where students learn how to fact check, identify bias. In parts in Africa, community radio and digital storytelling projects empower people to question narratives and share their truths, often blending traditional wisdom with digital tools. One of the chapters in the book is set in rural Australia, and it investigates concept of connectivity literacy. Researchers found that the farmers and rural residents' digital inclusion wasn't just about having internet access, but it was also about problem-solving skills, how to set up local hardware, to troubleshoot connectivity issues. This kind of literacy is deeply practical, and it's rooted in realities of rural life. On the other side, for example, in Latin America, colleagues studied community networks in remote areas in Brazil and Mexico. And these locally developed internet service providers work closely with communities to create education tools that respected cultural traditions and local needs. Their approach was bottom-up, with on-site training and community-led learning, which empowered people to adapt digital skills to their own environments and challenges. There are other chapters that include research on how young people engage with platforms like TikTok. Through digital ethnography, the authors showed how teenagers learn about algorithms, how they develop content creation skills, and practice ethical behavior online. All these examples show that digital literacy and critical thinking are not abstract concepts. They are lived, practiced, and adapted by communities worldwide, each in their own way and based on their own needs.
Is the book available in any other languages?
For now, it's in English, but I have an exclusive news for your listeners. Beijing, China, got the rights from Springer, who is the publisher. So in autumn this year, the book will be out in Chinese.
That is magnificent. That is going to open up the knowledge of the book to an entire new range of readers, millions of readers, in fact.
China's government recognized the relevance of these topics, and it's actually a plan of their governmental framework and action plan for their citizens.
That's great. Let's talk about the internet for a second. You and I have been around since the beginning of the internet, and so we've seen its evolution. We know that the internet acts as a mirror of human behavior, both in its beauty and unfortunately also in its callousness. Your book talks about how we can, and I'm quoting here, create, collaborate, engage, and communicate with others in a respectful and meaningful way. What might that look like in practice, and what are some real world practices that embody this kind of decency?
In practice, this means being mindful of the impact of our words and actions have online and striving to build digital spaces where everyone feels safe, valued, and heard. For example, one of the stories in the book highlights urban data literacy workshops in Germany, where making and crafting were used as hands-on tools to help youth and people with limited digital access participate in city planning conversations. So this creative inclusive approach not only built technical skills but also fostered empathy, respect, and a sense of belonging among participants who might otherwise feel excluded from digital discourse. The book also explores digital inclusion programs in South Africa, where community organizations provide mobile literacy training to underserved communities. These programs focus not just on teaching digital skills but on building confidence, agency, and a sense of community. These are all qualities that are essential for respectful and meaningful online engagement. On a practical level, these stories show how that decency online is about more than just avoiding negative behavior. It's about actively creating spaces for dialogue, collaboration, and shared learning. It means listening as much as speaking, being open to different perspectives, and holding ourselves accountable for the effects of our digital actions. As we navigate in the current digital transformation momentum, we need to remember that technology is a tool. It's up to us to build bridges, foster understanding, and create a digital culture where everyone can thrive.
I think we also need to acknowledge that there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation online and in other areas of civil society as well, particularly in the last couple of years. Can you break down the difference between misinformation and disinformation for us and maybe explain how critical thinking helps us deal with both?
Yeah, there's been a lot of confusion around the terms misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation is a false information that's shared by someone who genuinely believes it's true, but they're not trying to harm or mislead anyone. For example, during pandemic, many people shared on social media various home remedies that supposedly cured virus, but most of these people weren't trying to cause harm. They just didn't realize that maybe the information wasn't correct. On the other side, disinformation is false information that's created and spread on purpose with intention of deceiving or manipulating people. In political realm, this might look like, and it's very common practice everywhere in the world, fabricated stories or videos circulating during election times to damage candidates' reputation or to sway public opinion. These are deliberate attempts to mislead and influence behavior. It's very common. For instance, there were viral stories or fake videos of someone claiming to have voted illegally in multiple places, and these were deliberately created to mislead public online. And both types of false information can spread very quickly online, especially through social media and messaging apps. And that's where critical thinking becomes absolutely essential. When we see a claim online, it's important to pause and ask who is sharing this? Where this information come from? Is there credible evidence to support it? So by taking a moment to check the source or look for confirmation from reliable outlets, we can avoid spreading further misinformation. Disinformation in health can be more intentional, like when companies or groups deliberately distort scientific findings about foods or supplements just to sway public opinion or boost sales. So these campaigns are designed to manipulate, not just to misinform informed. Questioning what we see and checking facts and questioning claims that sound too good to be true and being cautious helps to protect ourselves and others from these types of mis and disinformation.
When I think of misinformation, disinformation, one of the things I also consider is who stands to benefit from particular types of information. If somebody is financially benefiting from something, you really need to look very carefully. I don't want to name names because there are plenty of charlatans here in the United States who peddle things that are really not healthy. But again, what is the purpose of doing that? Misleading people to line their own pocket. But that's not the only type of online scam that happens. We really also need to think about how can we protect ourselves from, let's say, fraud and scams, which show up in very, very sneaky ways. Can you maybe share with us some common scams you think people should be looking out for right about now?
Understanding the online environment is more important than ever because scams are evolving at incredible pace and often using new technologies in really, really sneaky ways. One of the most alarming trends right now that I spotted out is the use of artificial intelligence to impersonate real people, both celebrities and loved ones. For example, I saw the other day the news that happened in America. There have been heartbreaking cases where scammers use AI to clone the voice of family member. And this recent case was a 90-year-old grandmother who was scammed for some amount of dollars after receiving a call that sounded exactly like her grandson, claiming he was in troubles and he needed money urgently. And the scammers had used voice cloning technology, grabbing audio from social media to make the call completely convincing. And this grandparent scam is sadly on the rise, and it preys on our instinct to help loved ones in distress. And another area to watch out for is celebrity impersonation. Scammers are now using AI to create deep fake videos and messages featuring famous people to promote fake investments or phony charities. And there was this case that I read where a woman was tricked into believing she was in a relationship with Brad Pitt,
Not the real one.
AI generated version of Brad Pitt, and ended up sending large sums of money to the scammer. So these deepfakes are so realistic that even savvy internet users can be fooled. Another is crypto scams. Scammers might promise huge returns or claim to be a part of a new exclusive project, but once you send the money or connect to your digital wallet, it's gone. Phishing remains a classic but highly effective scam. Messages that look like they're from your bank or PayPal. Even the government may urge you to click on a link and provide some sensitive information. So these phishing attempts are getting more sophisticated, sometimes even using AI to tailor the message to you personally. What can we do to protect ourselves? I would say always be skeptical of urgent requests for money, especially if they come through unexpected calls or messages, even if the voice sounds familiar. Double check by contacting the person directly using a number. Call back your family member to check, did you just give me a call, just to see if this was legit. Then be wary of personal messages from famous people. Keep your social media profiles private to limit the information scammers. Staying informed and cautious is your best defense. If something feels off, just take a pause or verify, because today's scams are more convincing than ever.
You just shared some of the very grave risks that AI is presenting, but are there any opportunities that AI offers for digital inclusion and how we engage online?
AI can democratize access to information, creativity, and essential services. For example, learning platforms and AI driven education tools, making education more accessible for older adults and people with disabilities, personalizing content and breaking down traditional barriers. AI powered writing assistants can help non native speakers and those with limited resources to express themselves more clearly, expanding participation in digital spaces. For example, writers in remote regions with limited access to formal training can use AI to draft stories or to translate texts or maybe structure ideas. There are tools that we used before all this AI hype, like Grammarly, that can assist against non-native English speakers. Even native English speakers use Grammarly to polish their work. Then we have apps like Otter.ai to transcribe oral histories from marginalized communities into written form. So all these tools can empower voices often excluded from literary spaces. And of course, AI have potentiality to drive inclusion in healthcare and education. In healthcare, it can bridge gaps for underserved communities by enabling remote diagnostics or personalized care. For example, in rural India, AI-powered telemedicine platforms in India, telemedicine is very popular. So these platforms connect patients to doctors, reducing maternal mortality, etc. And similarly, in Africa, in Kenya, AI tutors can personalize lessons for students in underserved areas, and therefore they're bridging educational gaps. As for the risks, millions still lack the basic internet access. AI systems can perpetuate bias, training data lacks diversity. There's also threat of misinformation, as I mentioned, creating these deep fake videos and audios, fake news at scale. Then AI systems frequently make errors. AI systems frequently make these errors due to incorrect assumptions about user context or leading to confusion. Context errors occur when AI misinterpret user needs or cultural patterns, which can result in irrelevant outputs. And errors can also stem from poor training data, from mislabeled results, from incomplete data sets, all of which can skew AI performance and research findings. So I'll give you the recent example. Elon Musk's AI chatbox Grok is developed by xAI and integrated into X platform, formerly known Twitter. This recently come under intense scrutiny for spreading misinformation and disinformation regarding debunked conspiracy theory of white genocide in South Africa. And this episode has raised broader concerns about AI manipulation, platform governance, and the risks of using generative AI as the source of truth. So the company acknowledged that there was human intervention that directed chatbot to deliver specific responses on political topics and violating xAI's internal policies. It demonstrates how AI systems can be manipulated either intentionally or through inadequate oversight to propagate misinformation. This case just highlights why robust governance and legal frameworks and transparency and independent oversight are essential in development and deployment of generative AI. And without these safeguards, AI systems risk amplifying false narratives. They erode public trust and just amplify these existing social tensions. There's something very appealing and addictive with AI. There's this risk of over relying on AI. Over reliance is a documented risk, and research shows that human AI teams do not always outperform individuals or AI alone. Users often trust AI recommendations even when those recommendations are random. So nowadays, one can ask AI about personal life, business, solve problem. We as humans learn from mistakes on test and trial. We have and should cultivate this muscle. So if we leave everything to AI to solve for us, we lose that muscle. So what I can see from everything happening right now is that probably in the near future, there will be the rise of a new digital economy where authentic human-made creations become a true luxury. People will begin to crave genuine human connection, valuing content that reflects real personality with all imperfections and with the unique touch of its creator. So I think that human authenticity may soon be a luxury. And that's why it's very important that we write a book, that we compose a symphony or engage in a meaningful conversation, even if we make some mistake. After all, it's a sign of us humans. We are not perfect.
You beautifully share the importance of authenticity and humanity there versus something that is perfect but soulless and often misleading. You served as an expert on child online protection for the International Telecommunication Union. And we talked about some of the other threats going on right now in various realms, safety, scams, and so forth. Do you see any particular urgent threats facing children and youth online today? And is there something that our communities and institutions can do to respond effectively to those issues?
In my previous role and mission at the ITU, I focused on child online protection guidelines implementation in Asia and Pacific region, and I've seen firsthand how the digital landscape for children and youth is rapidly evolving, bringing both tremendous opportunities and significant risks. Some of the most urgent threats facing children online and youth include exposure to harmful content, cyberbullying, online grooming, and the misuse of personal data. And of course, the rise of AI has introduced new risks such as deepfakes and hyper-personalized manipulation, which can be particularly confusing and damaging for young users. Many educational systems and communities are still catching up with the pace of digital transformation and leaving gaps in both awareness and protection. How can communities and institutions respond effectively? First, it's very essential to adopt a collaborative and multi-stakeholder approach. That's what we did back at the ITU. This means bringing together policymakers, educators, parents, technology, IT companies, and most importantly, young people themselves to participate in these solutions. So, for instance, including implementing digital literacy and online safety into school, teaching children how algorithms shape their online experiences and to recognize misinformation and how to manage their digital footprints. And at the institutional level, we need governmental frameworks that prioritize the safety and privacy of children. And this includes advocating for age-appropriate design in digital services, transparent data practices, effective reporting system, because I've seen many countries have some sort of reporting system, but they're not effective, that will allow for swift action against abuse and exploitation. It is also crucial that technology companies are proactively child protection into their products and services, to adopt ethical standards, to collaborate closely with government, educators, and child rights organizations. And successful examples would be DigiWorld and Online Safety with Sango, which I helped in implementation. And these models are for interactive child-centered digital literacy education, and the initiatives empower not only children but also caregivers with practical skills, tips, and knowledge through games. And communities also play a crucial role. Parents and caregivers should be empowered with the knowledge and tools to support their children to navigate online world safely. And this could be achieved through local workshops, parent-child digital safety exercises, or open dialogues about online experiences. I've also seen many times parents lack basic digital skills, so this type of training could be useful. Only by working together in collaboration, all these groups in the society, we can ultimately create a safer and more empowering digital environment for the next generations.
Very good points. And in the past year or so, I've seen more and more people talk about the importance of trying to disconnect children from always being on their devices. The fact that a lot of parents are allowing their children access to the internet without any sort of gatekeeping, without any sort of buffers, is very, very frightening, because they are then exposed, as you mentioned, to some really bad things. We talked about how to protect youth and children, but I'm wondering, with regard to people on the margins, is there anything that governments, tech companies, and civil society can do?
Building a safer and more inclusive internet requires collaborative efforts from governments, tech companies, and civil society, each playing distinct but interconnected roles. For example, governments must act as stewards of digital public goods. This means crafting policies that prioritize universal access while safeguarding the rights. Critically, governments should fund digital literacy programs tailored to marginalized groups like tribal communities in India, using voice-based interfaces to bypass literacy barriers and enforce antitrust measures to prevent corporate monopolies from stifling inclusivity. Regulatory frameworks like EU Digital Service Act, which mandates transparency in content moderation, show how legislation can hold platforms accountable while preserving innovation. Then we have tech companies that must shift from profit-centric, move fast and break things models to ethical design rooted in community input. This means involving marginalized groups at every stage to preempt harms like algorithmic bias. For example, platforms could adopt a safety by design principle, such as default end-to-end encryption for activists in repressive regimes, or AI tools that detect hate speech in low-resource languages. Transparency is really non-negotiable, and companies should disclose how algorithms amplify content, as opaque systems often marginalize already vulnerable voices. Civil society organizations have a responsibility to serve as connective tissue, translating grassroots realities into policy and tech solutions, advocating for marginalized communities in standard setting bodies like ICANN, and providing on-ground expertise. For instance, Uganda's digital literacy programs were co-designed with local women and show how civil society organizations can democratize access while addressing culturally specific risks like tech-facilitated gender-based violence. This organization can hold power structures accountable. Also, community networks in rural areas built through partnerships between governments, NGOs, and local leaders also prove that decentralized infrastructure can bridge these connectivity gaps. So there is no one-size-fits-all approach. By combining regulatory muscle and ethical innovation and grassroots wisdom, we can build a digital world where safety and equality aren't just trade-offs, but really foundational principles.
We've been talking about how navigating the digital world often feels difficult. The question is, how can we better support each other across borders and platforms as we try to build a more compassionate, fair, and humane online space?
We live in the world that is marked by both digital and physical turmoil, with online threats, scams, digital discrimination on the rise, online safety risks for children, etc. And this is our reality, a landscape shaped by both virtual and real world danger, but also by choices we make every day. And navigating the digital world indeed can feel overwhelming as we seek our place in this fast changing, often fragmented space. Yet, I believe that we can build a more compassionate, fair, and humane digital society through intentional, individual, and collective action. It starts with recognizing the power each of us holds in shaping the tone and culture of our online spaces. First, it's important to acknowledge that our individual actions matter. Every comment, every share or post is a small vote of the kind of digital environment we want to create. By intentionally spreading kindness, offering encouragement, practicing empathy in our interactions, we can set a tone that inspires others to do the same. So behind every profile is a real person. Consider the impact of our words is fundamental act of kindness. And building a compassionate online space also means curating our communities and engaging. And by following and amplifying voices that promote fairness and empathy, and by engaging into constructive conversations like this podcast, then we contribute and create digital environments that energize and uplift us rather than divide or drain us. And ultimately, the digital world reflects our personal and collective choices. By acting with intention, supporting one another, and collaborating across boundaries, we can transform internet into a space that is not only safer but also more compassionate and for everyone, including most vulnerable groups or marginalized groups. For example, here in Germany, I moved here a year and a half ago. There are several apps and website communities. I was really surprised, with local neighborhoods where people share not only information, but they give away things they don't use. There are cultural events. They share food and they help each other. This is one of the local positive examples. It's very important we engaged in this type of empathy and curiosity.
We're seeing a lot of people craving in person experiences again, especially in the last couple of years since the pandemic. Do you think that points to something that digital life can't quite satisfy, or do you see us creating a blend of that through the examples that you just shared?
During pandemic, digital technologies became our lifeline. They enabled us to work, learn, socialize, even access essential services. However, as the world has reopened and we have seen a strong desire to return to face-to-face interaction, now we have hybrid model of work, and it just reflects the irreplaceable value of physical presence, of spontaneous conversations, and shared sensory experiences. In-person gatherings offer connection, emotional palette, and sense of belonging that digital platforms often struggle to replicate. The atmosphere of live events, of concerts, the energy of the crowded room, maybe body language, all this contribute to the richness of communication and community that sometimes virtual environments can only approximate. But I think we are still in digital fatigue. I think it's really widespread phenomenon, even that we are not anymore under the lockdowns. Many people just reported feeling exhausted by constant stream of online meetings, notifications, these blurred boundaries between work and personal life. All these digital tools offer incredible convenience. They also can lead to the feelings of isolation or disconnection or even anxiety, especially when they replace rather than complement our offline lives. So I believe that this renewed craving for in-person experiences is a reminder of our need for human connection, for balance, for empowerment, for authenticity of being together in person.
You mentioned that you've been living in Germany for the past year and a half, in Cologne specifically, I believe. And on social media, I saw where you posted that this is a quote: "Art is my religion, museums and concert halls, the church." What are some of your favorite cultural experiences in Cologne and elsewhere? And how do you balance your online and offline worlds?
It's very difficult. I try to balance it out by spending time with friends, meeting new people, attending concerts, art exhibitions, or some social events. I recently moved to a new place here in Cologne, and I have a micro Zen forest garden nearby. It's a beautiful place with loads of trees in the street where I live and surrounding, and there are various species of birds. This app called Merlin Bird app
Oh, yeah.
is developed by Cornell Lab and it detects bird sounds, songs in the surroundings. I love that app. It's very interesting. I try to stay curious, to read, to learn something every day. I started to learn German, taking several digital sabbaticals throughout the year where I don't engage in social media. I also try first thing in the morning not to doom scroll. I try to just spend first half an hour to read something. For everyone who plans to come this summer to visit Cologne at Museum Wallraff. It's beautiful exhibition, French Impressionists, where you can see Renoir, Monet, Gauguin. And also Cologne has a great philharmonic, beautifully architecturally designed auditorium with amazing acoustics. And a few months ago, I enjoyed concert with a local orchestra conducted by Finnish conductor Sakari Oramo. They performed Sibelius, Jean Sibelius, Finnish composer, Saga Number 9. It was spectacular. And since I moved here, I started Substack where I write about not only life here, but also about creative process, writing, observations in technology, culture, and art.
Speaking of your Substack, I've been reading it as well. In it, you reflect a very interesting multi layered sense of identity between Serbia, Italy, Germany, and elsewhere. How do you make sense of this, what you call constellation of identity, in your work and in your personal life?
All of us are complex and multi-layered beings, shaped by not only history but legacies and ancestors, and we carry within us both biological and collective memory. In my case, it's interconnected map of places, histories, and memories that span not only Serbia, Italy, Germany, but beyond. This sense of being in between is both gift and a challenge, something that I'm currently exploring deeply in my writing. Growing up in Balkans at the crossroads of East and West, actually I was born in Yugoslavia. That doesn't exist anymore. So I inherited a rich tapestry of influences, Ottoman and Greek on one side, Austro-Hungarian and Mediterranean on the other side. My ancestors came from Thessalonica area in northern Greece, where I like to say once Aristotle walked. And from the heart of Balkans, there are threads reaching some parts of northern Italy. So this intersection of cultures has given me a holistic perspective. This complexity also means that sometimes that I feel that I don't fully belong anywhere. Professionally, I'm present in Germany, while my mind or work or friends are spread in America, India, Australia, everywhere. By writing, I try to bridge these distances, spatial, temporal, and emotional. And it's how I honor both my ancestors and the present moment, and how I stand in multiple territories at once. And every border crossed and every language learned becomes just another room in the house of the perspective. My upcoming book of short stories, it's both testament to an exploration of that multi-layered identity. It's just a living, breathing constellation, always shifting, expanding, changing, and just inviting us to see the world from multiple points at once.
Can you share the title?
It's called Counterpoints. Next year it will be out.
You also shared online how you recently learned about your grandfather's internment during World War II in a Nazi camp, and how you now live just 90 kilometers from where he was imprisoned. And you wrote that the echoes of my grandfather's involuntary path have transformed into my voluntary exploration as I navigate my own way through these same German landscapes, creating new meanings and forging fresh pathways.
So I learned as an adult that my grandfather survived internment in a Nazi camp in northern Westphalia, just an hour away from where I live now. And that was a profound revelation. Growing up, this chapter of family's history was carefully shielded not only from me, but from others. We knew that, but we didn't know details. So it was only after I accepted my current position in Germany that my mother told me how close I would be living to the site of his wartime ordeal. Surviving this in a Nazi camp was extremely rare and a testament to resilience. Prisoners endured brutal treatment, starvation, disease. Many survivors have described the daily struggle to stay alive, the loss of dignity, the trauma that lasted long after the liberation. Something happened very ironic and symbolic, how time, even 70 years apart, one would perceive and intertwine in today's moment, that we should never forget the history. In my neighborhood, it was discovered 500-pound heavy bomb from Second World War, and it prompted a nighttime evacuation. Usually here, these bombs are diffused during the day, but this was hazard urgent situation. 5,000 people evacuated in the middle of the night, in wee hours, including myself. And it was a physical reminder of how history remains embedded in the places we inhabit. This intersection of personal and historical geography has become ongoing, deeply personal research project for me. So I'm trying to gather the fragments from my mother's memories, from some photographs. I do plan to go there. There is a memorial center there, and maybe contact archive to check my grandfather's identity or maybe discover something new. The act of writing for me is both creative expression, but also a form of processing generational trauma and maybe to reclaim agency over my own story.
Thank you so much for sharing that. What does resilience mean to you today? And how can we cultivate it as individuals and communities, both online and offline?
For me, resilience is about adaptability and curiosity, qualities that are more accessible than ever thanks to the internet. It's not just enduring challenges, but it's actively seeking new knowledge and perspectives, even when the world feels this uncertain or overwhelming. One of the things I love about our current times is the access to information. If you wanted to read Proust decades ago, you had to track down the physical copy at the library. But now, while researching for this new book of mine, I found out a rare Jules Verne novel, original from 19th century, scanned and available online for free from Bodleian Library at University of Oxford at archive.org. So I'm reading it in my living room, and all you need is a basic internet connection. Suddenly, world libraries and courses, these are at your fingertips. This is about intention. I want to mention one word I really love. You remember from the early days of the internet, there was cybernetics. The word cyber has the root in Greek word of cybernao, which means to steer. So we each have the power to steer our own ship through the digital sea. We each have the power to choose. Are we going to learn something new, to connect, show our inner curiosity or willingness to grow? Cultivating this spirit both individually and collectively, for me, starts with asking questions and embracing lifelong learning. I believe it always begins with ourselves. Again, ancient Greeks had this powerful maxim I really love. It's called know thyself. This wisdom is timeless. Self-knowledge and self-awareness is the foundation of meaningful contribution, whether personal, local, or global scales. Maybe I can encourage and inspire everyone to adopt Socrates' method of inquiry, of asking good questions. Question your assumptions, to seek understanding, bring a spirit of curiosity and logic into your daily life. Also worth mentioning, now that we talked a lot about AI, I would say that we should, including myself, not to rely too much on large language models for every decision or piece of advice. Exercise that muscle of growth. Why not bringing back into fashion reading? And on a local level, I encourage people to contribute to their micro communities, whether it's a book club or neighborhood initiative or some online group. Small actions can have a ripple effect, inspiring others around you and gradually building more thoughtful and humane world.
Where can people find you online to learn more about your work?
You can find me online in a few places. I write weekly column on Substack. It's called Digital Serendipities, where you can subscribe for free and join conversation. I share many of these experiences and insights. It's a space where I explore the intersection of technology, society, and creativity. My goal is to spark curiosity and encourage thoughtful conversations about our lives and digital lives. My website is danica.info, and I'm also active on Instagram, danica.radovanović.
Danica, thank you so much for having taken the time today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to share my thoughts and connect with your audience. Thank you, Andrea.